From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The U.S. government made a big mistake. They killed innocent people. This was a serious crime. They turned many kids into orphans, many wives into widows. Many were killed and many others were injured, although everyone was innocent.
A wedding that became a funeral. A new report on a U.S. drone strike in Yemen last December reveals that some, if not all, the dozen people killed were civilians, not al-Qaeda, as officials initially claimed. We'll speak with the author of the Human Rights Watch report and with Jeremy Scahill. Then a University of California scientist, Tyrone Hayes, discovered a popular herbicide may have harmful effects on the endocrine system. When he tried to publish the results, the company that makes the chemical launched a campaign to discredit his work.
We were a bit surprised when we found out that when we exposed frogs to very low levels of atrazine, 0.1 parts per billion, that it produced animals that look like this. These are the dissected gonads of an animal that has 2 testes, 2 ovaries, another large testes, more ovaries, which is not normal.
Then we'll look at the shadow lobbying complex. On paper, influence peddling has declined. In reality, it's gone underground. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Ukraine's President Viktor Yanukovych announced concessions to his pro-European opponents Friday, including a plan to hold early elections, but it remains unclear whether the opposition will accept the deal. At least 47 people died Thursday in the most violent day Ukraine has seen since it became independent 22 years ago. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon condemned both the police and armed protesters for using deadly force.
I continue to strongly appeal to all involved to cease the violence and for the Ukrainian authorities to refrain from excessive use of force. I'm appalled by the use of firearms by both the police and protesters. I urge all parties to immediately resume a genuine dialogue. This is the only way to prevent further bloodshed and arrive at a solution to the deepening political, security, and economic crisis.
In news from Somalia, the presidential palace in Mogadishu has come under attack. Police say a huge car bomb exploded outside the gates, then militants attempted to shoot their way into the compound. It's unclear how many people have died. The United Nations top envoy to the country said the Somalian president survived the attack. 3 Al Jazeera journalists on trial in Egypt pleaded not guilty Thursday to having links to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Egyptian military government has accused them of joining or aiding and abetting a terrorist organization. A trio were denied bail, and their trial was adjourned until March 5th. Heather Allen, the head of Al Jazeera English news gathering, criticized Egyptian authorities for prosecuting journalists.
We believe we will be acquitted. The lawyers are fully on board with us. They fully believe in our case. They fully believe that we were just operating as journalists. We don't have an agenda. We've got nothing against Egypt. We certainly don't lie or do biased reporting. So we believe we believe that we are innocent.
In news from Japan, about 100 tons of highly radioactive water have leaked from one of the hundreds of storage tanks at the devastated Fukushima nuclear plant. The Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, described it as the worst spill at the plant in 6 months. Next month marks the 3rd anniversary of the meltdown at Fukushima. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's reporting last month was the 4th warmest January globally since record-keeping began in 1880. Temperature maps show much of the world except the eastern United States experience warmer than average temperatures. The NOAA also reported 37% of the United States is now suffering from drought. Precipitation was below normal for more than 30 states last month. President Obama has dropped a measure to trim cost of living increases in Social Security from an upcoming budget proposal. While the move was praised by progressive Democrats, the White House admitted the cuts, known as chain CPI, remain, quote, on the table, but only as part of a grand bargain deal with Republicans. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit challenging the legality of the New York Police Department's secret surveillance of Muslims in New Jersey. The lawsuit alleged the surveillance programs were unconstitutional because they focused on religion, national origin, and race. U.S. District Judge William Martini said the motive for the program was not solely to discriminate against Muslims, but to find Muslim terrorists hiding among the ordinary law-abiding Muslims. Judge Martini also criticized the Associated Press for exposing the secret spy program. He wrote, quote, "Nowhere in the complaint do the plaintiffs allege they suffered harm prior to the unauthorized release of documents by the Associated Press. This confirms that plaintiffs' alleged injuries flow from the Associated Press's unauthorized disclosure of the documents," they said. The judge went on to write, quote, "The Associated Press covertly obtained the materials and published them without authorization. Thus, the injury, if any existed, is not fairly traceable to the city." In Georgia, the family of a 17-year-old ROTC student was shot and killed by a police officer, says police mistook a video game controller the teenager was holding for a gun. Police shot dead Christopher Roop on February 14th when officers showed up at his mobile home to serve a probation violation warrant for his dad. Police had claimed the teenager pointed a gun at the time of the shooting, but the family says a Nintendo Wii video game controller was in his hands. Meanwhile, authorities in Bastrop County, Texas, are also facing questions over a fatal shooting. On Sunday, a police officer shot dead a 47-year-old African-American woman as she opened the door for police at her boyfriend's house. Police initially claimed Yvette Smith was armed, but investigators now say they, quote, cannot confirm if she had a gun or even if she refused to follow commands. In news from Africa, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has appealed to the international community to send an additional 3,000 troops and police to the Central African Republic to combat worsening sectarian violence.
It's a calamity with a strong claim on the conscience of humankind. Over the past year, we have seen in quick succession the violent overthrow of the government, the collapse of state institutions, and the descent into lawlessness and sectarian brutality. More than 2.5 million people, more than half the population, need immediate humanitarian assistance.
A Haitian appellate court has ruled that former U.S.-backed dictator Jean-Claude Baby Doc Duvalier could be charged with crimes against humanity under international law. The suit was filed by victims of forced disappearances and torture during his 15-year rule. The court reversed an earlier ruling. The Humane Society of the United States has just released undercover videos showing shocking conditions at a huge hog operation in Kentucky called Iron Maiden Farms. One video shows pigs confined in cramped cages known as gestation crates being fed ground-up intestines from piglets who had recently succumbed to a highly contagious disease. More than 900 piglets recently died from the disease in a 2-day period. In related news, Idaho has become the latest state to consider an ag-gag bill that would impose penalties for trespassing and filming without permission in farming facilities. In 2012, undercover activists in Idaho filmed workers stomping on cows, beating and dragging them at a dairy farm. Former Black Panther Russell Maroon Shoatz has been moved out of solitary confinement for the first time in 22 years. Last year, the 70-year-old prisoner filed a lawsuit against the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections over being held in isolation for so long. You can go to our website at democracynow.org for our recent special on aging political prisoners being held in solitary confinement. Jerry Boykin is back in the news. The retired Army Lieutenant General who once described the war on terror as a holy war is now predicting Jesus will return to Earth armed with an AR-15. Boykin now serves as the executive vice president of the Family Research Council. He made the comment at a recent pro-family legislators conference in Dallas, Texas.
The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. And in Revelation 19, it says when he comes back, he's coming back as what? A warrior, a mighty warrior leading a mighty army, riding a white horse with a blood-stained white robe. And I don't know about the theologians, and I was at Dallas Theological Seminary yesterday, and I said, I'm not going to argue theology with you folks, but I believe that blood on that robe is the blood of his enemies, because he's coming back as a warrior, carrying a sword. And I believe now, I've checked this out, I believe that sword he'll be carrying when he comes back is an AR-15.
That's retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. And while the Academy Awards are still a few weeks away, the Oscar-nominated documentary The Act of Killing had an unusual screening on Thursday. It was projected on the World Bank headquarters in Washington, D.C. The East Timor and Indonesian Action Network used the film to call on the World Bank to acknowledge its role in the 1965 military coup in Indonesia that led to the massacre of an estimated 1 million civilians. Robin Bell of Bell Visuals helped set up the screening.
We'd like to project on buildings. We like people to see the films, and we want to kind of shake things up and, you know, spark dialogue. We've had people walk by who have no idea about the crimes that were committed, and this is a good way to spark discussion and get people's comments and, in general, let people know what's going on.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.